Nick Wright hasn't necessarily been in good graces of Ravens fans, and he made a comment about John Harbaugh and started a conversation that will certainly split the Ravens fan base. We'll talk about that and so much more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher. Ravens Wire here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now the #1 sports podcast network. Appreciate everybody for being here and making Locked On Ravens a part of your day. And thank you to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners. If you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. We have 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens content and coverage. We have a jam-packed episode today as Nick Wright made a comment and had a conversation about John Harbaugh that I think is going to bring out a couple of different opinions within the Ravens fan base. We'll talk about that in the first part of the show. In the second part of the show, the Ravens got a defensive boost on Tuesday. We'll dive into who returned to practice and what it could mean for the Ravens defense down the stretch. And finally, we'll talk about some big Ravens and Steelers updates, especially from the Pittsburgh side of things that could really impact how this Week 14 matchup goes between Baltimore and Pittsburgh. Want to tell everyone and remind everyone today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Here to talk about that with me and a lot more is former Ravens receiver and Super Bowl champion Qadry Ismail of Missile Training and MissileTraining.com. I'll tell you what. Right now, I am embarrassed to be a part of the AFC North here. You know, I'm not going to lie. This Ravens team right now, and the whole division itself has just been extremely underwhelming. I mean, the AFC North is the only division in the NFL without a 7-win team. The Ravens and the Steelers obviously are tied for the lead with 6. The only other team that doesn't have, or only other division that doesn't have 2 7-win teams is the NFC East. 2 very quality divisions over the last handful of seasons that just have kind of not been that good this year. And so we'll dive into that Ravens and Steelers game a little bit more over the course of the show. But I want to start off with a conversation that Nick Wright had that's getting a lot of attention right now. And it's something that I think has been floated around over the last couple of years. And that is essentially John Harbaugh's job security and what, his path to either staying or going in Baltimore could be. And Nick Wright over on First Things First, when Chris Broussard was asked about what was happening to the Ravens, they're having a conversation on the Ravens. He started a conversation that said the roster's the roster, and Lamar is obviously the Ravens' hope as their quarterback for the next 10 years. And then Nick Wright said, quote, which leads us to this: John Harbaugh should be coaching for his job the rest of the year. And then Chris Broussard ended up saying, I agree. I actually felt this way the whole season. And Nick Wright continues and says, quote, obviously, if they miss the playoffs, constantly underachieved, because he then talked about, because he's a big Chiefs guy. That's Nick Wright's thing, because he was talking about, the Chiefs are 6-6 too. But I think his point was that, the track record for Kansas City, multiple Super Bowls, AFC championships, regardless, the Ravens haven't been there. The Chiefs, this is the first year it really feels like they're underachieving like that. The Ravens have not had any hardware to back it up. So that was the point of John Harbaugh versus Andy Reid for Nick Wright. But then he continued and said, even if, to your point, Brew, meaning Chris Broussard, if they make the playoffs, but by default and then get clocked, and if they look like this in the playoffs and they lose in the wild card to Buffalo or whoever they would play, I just don't know how Baltimore can run it back again. Lamar was hurt a couple years, fine, but you were the 1 seed, you lose the AFC title game. Last year, you can't get past Buffalo. If this year you miss the playoffs, that's 3 straight years of going backwards. And, he continued on a little bit after that. But the point is an interesting one, Q, because I know John Harbaugh is a very controversial figure right now within the Ravens fan base. Some people want him to stay and he's, awesome, this, that, and the other. Other people get him out of here. He should have been gone last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever that conversation is. I've tended to be somewhere in the middle where I still think he's a good head coach, but sometimes it's just time. And I wouldn't have been floored if they got rid of him last season. And, there are a lot of other conversation points about that. But long story short, Q, is that the Ravens obviously have Super Bowl expectations. They haven't been able to win one, let alone get to one in the Lamar Jackson era, which has been a disappointment. And with the year they've had and some of the weaknesses we have seen, I don't think there's a lot of confidence within the fan base that even if they do make the playoffs, this team can go on a long playoff run. And that probably would have to start a lot of hard conversations within that organization.
Yeah, I think the expectations that we have put on this team, it's Lamar Jackson, 2018 and forward, Super Bowl or bust. The way in which we've seen it be an abject failure each and every year, this fan base has kind of reached its limit. When you look at Andy Reid, and full disclosure, I was able to attend the Eagles Black Friday football contest versus the Chicago Bears. My son Qadry is now with the Chicago Bears, going through his journey in the NFL. And I'm sitting there as a casual observer. I don't have any skin in the game because, my son, obviously, he's just there to watch and kind of, hopefully at some point get on the active roster. But the point is I'm looking at the banners. I'm looking at, I think, who was it? Malcolm Jenkins, the Philadelphia Eagles great. He was being inducted into their Ring of Honor. And rightly so, he had a great career and all the things that come along with it. But you saw the banners, the championship banners, where like Andy Reid didn't just make the playoffs. I mean, he advanced to the NFC championship games. And they were like consecutive years where they were having excellence, but they let him go. Andy Reid found work elsewhere and clearly reestablished himself as a Hall of Fame coach and a dominant coach. They obviously themselves, the Eagles, retooled some things, redefined what they wanted to do as far as general manager was concerned. And sure enough, they got themselves two banners that say world champions on it. So it's not like we have to sit here and say, oh, look at John Harbaugh. Gosh, he's such a great coach. We already know he's a great coach. But sometimes in organizations, hey, it's time to move on and see other opportunities for that coach and for you as an organization and a fan base. I think that's what we're looking at in the bigger picture of things when it comes to John Harbaugh and potentially the decision that is going to be made or not made by Steve Bisciotti when it comes to John Harbaugh and Eric Costa.
Yeah, and I think we can all acknowledge and admit, actually, Sam and Njoku and I attempted to like bring the fan base together on John Harbaugh with both sides. It didn't work, spoiler alert. But my point was that I think we can acknowledge that, Harbaugh's had a great Ravens tenure, obviously, especially early in his career when he was going to the AFC championship game with Joe Flacco as a rookie in 2008 against the Steelers, and obviously won the Super Bowl and was close to getting to a couple of others. But again, close doesn't mean anything in this league. You have to get there and win. Even if you make the Super Bowl, you get the banner, at least that you made it there, but that's still not the ultimate goal. This is the goal. The ultimate goal is winning a Super Bowl. And with some of these teams, I think that's the sore spot. I think with some of these opportunities the Ravens have had, Q, over the last 5, 6, 7 years with Lamar Jackson, 2019, 2023, 2024, with the way that they've looked in some of those years and either having disappointing exits or coming up just short. It has been unfortunate. And like they've moved on from multiple defensive coordinators or lost them. In the case of Mike Macdonald, they've moved on from multiple offensive coordinators. The constant has been John Harbaugh. And so, yes, like Harbaugh has been an incredible coach. He's rated up there highly in terms of like, who are some of the greatest coaches. Harbaugh, I'm sure when it's all said and done and he's done with his coaching career, whether that is Baltimore or if he goes elsewhere and whatnot, like he's going to be in those conversations. But we have seen issues with him pop up, like time management, challenge management, game plan stuff. He is the head coach. He is responsible for what happens, even when, he's not the one that is calling the plays on offense or defense. So look, Nick Wright has said some pretty crazy stuff about Lamar Jackson before, which clearly we've disagreed with and we've talked about on this show. I think that Nick is correct here, Q, where for me at least, I think that I've been a big part, and I've said this for years, is complacency is something I don't want this team to fall in, right? Where you have great regular seasons and then you lose in the division round, like, man, but hey, great regular season. We won 10 games or 11 games or 12 games. That's not the goal here, especially when you have Lamar Jackson. And so sometimes it just is time. And other teams, I think, are also going through this. The Steelers with Mike Tomlin. That fan base is sick and tired of Mike Tomlin right now, especially after how they looked. The Bills and Sean McDermott. That's a team that's also, gotten AFC championship games, but hasn't ended up getting over the hump. Like those are coaches that, people widely regard as like good ones or who have had great tenures with these teams, but are not necessarily there. And I think the big thing, Q, is regardless of how you feel about John Harbaugh, 3 playoff wins in the last 10 seasons is just not going to cut it. And that predates Lamar Jackson. And so a lot of early season success, we know, Q, this is what have you done for me now lately league. And unfortunately, with some of these rosters, is it all on John Harbaugh that these teams haven't been successful and made the Super Bowl and won it? No, it's a team sport. It's a team effort. But as the head coach, you are going to get a lot of that blame because you are the one that's responsible for your coaching staff, for your players, for putting a culture in place, for getting that messaging across that John Harbaugh took accountability for after that Bengals game. So it's a very loaded conversation. And at this point, I do think that making or breaking his tenure this season will be if the Ravens can make the playoffs and go on a deep run. Because if they don't, I agree with Nick. Like, how can you run it back regressing for 3 straight seasons when Lamar's not 24 anymore? He's not old, but he's not like a rookie or a second-year player where you have like 15 years with him.
Interesting when you say Lamar's not young and he's not old. Yet when you look at the marker that all of us have gone through, it's that talent. The talent is high. The elevator of Father Time, they meet up. And yeah, when your talent is at its zenith, you can recover. When your talent is living large, you look great. But when you look at the season, and I think it was one of our colleagues, Jeff Zubek, he was reporting in one of his articles on Lamar Jackson how if you look at the consecutive games, completing less than 60% of his passes, his longest run hasn't been anything over 20 yards the entire season. He's averaging less than 3 yards a run. It goes on, and those are things that you just thought were unheard of. And so, bigger picture wise, that's where, yeah, I don't care who you are, that window is small, and you best take advantage of that window. And so now you're in that in between space. And so I think for both Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta, you got to make a decision if you're Steve Bisciotti. Do you want to stick with DeCosta and Harbaugh, or do you want to let them go, keep Lamar Jackson, build a team, and feel like, hey, new fresh ideas and all that can garner a Super Bowl and perhaps multiple Super Bowls with Lamar Jackson as your quarterback? That's going to be the question to be asked and answered this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, my personal opinion is I'm keeping Lamar no matter what, but I do know that, they're going to have to restructure his contract. Right? It's an absolute must for them to restructure that deal, the $70 million cap hit. And, Lamar is one of the best we've seen here. I mean, in my opinion, I think that, if there's a choice between them or Lamar, I personally am choosing Lamar 10 times out of 10 there. And I do think that maybe like we saw with Todd Monken after replacing Greg Roman, like Harbaugh got them to a certain point. Maybe a new coach can get them to a higher point. Like we saw with Roman. Roman got them to a certain point, but they needed someone else to get them to a higher point. So, I think that Lamar needs to be the franchise quarterback of this team until he retires, until he's not able to do it anymore. And, I think that he's not slowing down right now. I just think the injuries are obviously having an effect on him. But I think that is a reminder that, like, no one can escape injuries when they happen. It's just a reminder of, like, no one is invincible in the sports world, let alone the world in general. But like it's multiple difficult conversations are going to have to be had over the course of the next couple of months for this Ravens team. And there are a lot of different outcomes depending on how the season finishes. But coming up with the second part of the show, we'll talk about the Ravens getting an offensive boost that could really help them down the stretch when these guys end up hitting the football field again and playing snaps for this team. Stay tuned. Plenty coming your way on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Aura Frames. The holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is the gift that delivers every time. It's not just something you wrap. It's a way to share memories because Aura isn't your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it. So when they plug it in, the memories are already there. No apps to figure out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. And there are a lot of people that I think would want this. You got grandparents, parents, newlyweds, anyone who loves photos. And there are endless uploads of pictures and 30-second videos through the Aura app. You can add a personalized message right inside the frame so the gift feels thoughtful the moment it's opened. And packaging comes gift ready. No price tag, no wrapping needed. Huge win. For a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver Mat frames, named #1 by Wirecutter by using promo code LOCKEDON at checkout. That's auraframes.com, promo code LOCKEDON. This deal is exclusive to listeners and frames sell out fast. So order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. Back here, Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher and Qadry Ismail still here with you on this Wednesday edition of the show. Appreciate everybody for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. Hugh, we got some good news on Tuesday from the Ravens. I wasn't really expecting anything, and John Harbaugh talked about on Monday how, hey, Ardarius Washington, Tavius Robinson, they had a good chance of returning. Well, good chance turned into, yeah, they're back. As we got news and word from the Ravens that Ardarius and Tavius both returned to practice. Ardarius obviously suffered that torn Achilles in May, I believe it was, right, Q? It was obviously during the offseason, and Tavius suffering that broken foot. Let's start with Ardarius because I think that's the guy that people are talking about. Not that Tavius isn't important. We're going to get to him in a couple of minutes. But Ardarius is obviously someone the Ravens haven't had at all this season. Tavius had played before going down. We know how important he was to last year's defensive turnaround after the Ravens went through all of those shifts and showed his big playability, his knack for turning the football over in big moments, a really clutch player. Honestly, one of the Ravens' more clutch players last season. But obviously, you have a background in sports and performance. You know what the recoveries look like for Achilles injuries and, clean tears versus not clean tears and other recovery surgery options, how high or how low the tear is on the Achilles and whatnot. Those are all factors that factor in. For Ardarius, he's probably going to go through, I'd assume, his entire 3-week window, because once you do open that window, you have 21 days to activate the player or keep him on injured reserve or whatever list he's on. What are your expectations, assuming Ardarius can come back at some point this season, maybe, mid to late December for a playoff push, or right as the playoffs begin? They brought in Alohi Gilman. They obviously have Kyle Hamilton. They're rotating guys in and out there. Would you expect him to kind of take Gilman snaps? Would you expect him to just rotate in at times? I mean, I know a lot of people with these injuries, Q, kind of expect, they're back on the field, they're 100% themselves, when rarely that's the case, and you need to figure stuff out, trust your body again in some instances, figure out what movements feel natural to you coming off of a serious injury like that.
Yeah, all those things. When you look at an Achilles, it's whether or not you've been on schedule and ready to, get back out and use the tendon correctly. So I don't know his training, and I'm assuming that, a lot of the traditional training, which has what is considered heels down training, that's what kind of puts you in that spot to begin with. And hopefully, someone was able to figure out how to help him overcome. The art of running, sprinting, and going forward is relatively a routine flow. It's the decelerating and changing direction. And for a defender, really getting in there, absorbing tremendous amounts of force when you're tackling a person, your body can take it and your body can handle it. But again, you can't have that heels down training. If you have the heels down training, that's going to just put you at further risk. So, I think bigger picture wise, he should be okay. I don't think it's a scenario where, you're looking at like, oh, geez, I don't know, Ardarius. Plenty of guys have come back. I know that Ben Watson. I know that who else? We had Terrell Suggs. We had Steve Smith Sr. All
Nick
those
Moore.
guys went out with those Nick Moore. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
The Achilles. And I will tell you, you can come back. You can come back strong and just play with a level of certainty and not even worry about it. But again, no heels down in the ground is what I would be telling him to make sure, no more worry about the non-contact coming into play.
Right. I think, yeah, Tyus Bowser was another one who,
Tyus Bowser, yeah. There's
yeah,
been quite a few guys that have had that Achilles kind of get up on them.
I'm excited for him to come back. And again, I hope he's able to find himself on the football field and really feel confident. But again, I know it's different for everybody in their recoveries getting back out there. Now for Tavius Q with the broken foot, still tied for second on that sack leaderboard in Baltimore with Kyle Van Noy and Nnamdi Madubuike with 2 sacks. And obviously he's only played in 6 games this year. Nnamdi's case is a little bit more embarrassing for the team as he only played in 2 games and is tied for second on that sack leaderboard. But it goes to show how little pass rush the Ravens have had over the course of the season and how impactful Tavius was in his 6 games with the team. And we know that he's already an excellent run defender. He's played a ton of snaps for this team. I think Baltimore has missed him during the time that he's been out. What about that specific injury? I guess Isaiah Likely also suffered a fracture in his foot. So I guess it's kind of similar there. Him coming back from that, getting back on the field, and what impact you think that he can have based off what we saw from Tavius earlier in the season?
Yeah, so I think the big thing from a foot aspect and have experiences with that as well with some of my colleagues. I think one of the thing that the main thing is the process of getting back and not, putting yourself in too much stressful situations in the very beginning. But then as you go on and as the bone and the marrow and the collagen and the fiber class and fibroblasts kind of start to reconnect and the connective tissue starts to reform itself. It's one of those scenarios where now it's pain management and it's making sure that one, you're treating the nerve, you're treating the connective tissue, you're treating the tendons, you're treating the ligaments in the surrounding area and the surrounding tissue, and you're trying to make sure the blood flow is steady. And so if you can do those things, put yourself in a stable state, increasing your vitamin C collagen combination to help some of the fibers around the soft tissue, and as well as good old fashioned bone broth, good old fashioned vitamin D3 and MK7, the combo together help push that calcium back into the tissue. Woo, man, those are great combinations. Add some red light therapy, some photobiomodulation to assist in the reformation of the tissue in the surrounding area. I think that, yeah, you get back out there and play fine and play well.
If you have a broken foot, you're watching, you're listening to this, be sure you save this episode or send it to somebody because you're getting all the tips and tricks here from Q with this stuff. But of course, really important for our Darius.
Consult your doctor, though, just in case.
Yes. Do that as well. Or, make sure to do that too. Tavius and Ardarius, we know Q are so important to this team. And I hope that, again, they can have instant impacts because the Ravens really do need it, especially because we went over the splits on the squad show on Monday about their stats defensively versus some of the higher tiered quarterbacks in this league versus the lower tiered quarterbacks in this league. And there is quite a discrepancy when it comes to the two. The Ravens on Sunday will be facing off against who knows who, Aaron Rodgers or Mason Rudolph or whoever it'll be. But we'll be diving into the Steelers and the Ravens and some already big news that could impact the outcome of this game, especially on the Pittsburgh side of things. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty coming up here on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. And FanDuel lets you jump into the moment with live spreads and money lines that adjust instantly. And right now on FanDuel, before the game, the Ravens and Steelers facing off in a Week 14 matchup. The Ravens right now, 5.5-point home favorites against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Huge game for both teams. Could have major, in fact, it will have major implications in the AFC North race. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. It is Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher, Qadry Ismail still rocking out with you here on this Wednesday edition of the show. It was rivalry week. It's Steelers week. You know, we know, and I know you know how charged up that week is, and you know the days leading up to it and the physicality that comes with those games is like none other. But we know that both these teams are struggling, and this game has major implications because I do not believe that a second team from the AFC North is going to be making the playoffs this year. I think it's just going to be the division winner as the 4 seed. Right now, the Ravens have the tiebreaker over Pittsburgh due to common opponent record. Ravens are at 5-3. Pittsburgh is at 4-4. But obviously, Pittsburgh wins this game, they'll be ahead because of the tiebreaker. If Baltimore wins, they'll put themselves in an even better position to be ahead of the Steelers than to have that Week 18 matchup. But one big key player that the Steelers are already going to be missing is Derrick Harmon, their first-round pick.
Yeah.
He's out with a knee injury. And it's a big blow to Pittsburgh's run defense because, you know, we saw Q in the draft back in April. And, you know, we saw what happened. The Steelers, the Bengals, and the Browns all took defensive linemen. And I'm sure that was. And Mike Tomlin, you know, talked about Harmon a little bit as well, him being out and talking about how if you can't stop the run in the AFC North, well, you're going to have a bad time. And in the 3 games Harmon has missed this season for the Steelers, James Cook had 177 total yards, Breece Hall 145 total yards, as well as Kenneth Walker 118 total yards. So could be a big game for Derrick Henry. Hopefully, again, we talked about how John Harbaugh mentioned the game flow of the game against Cincinnati didn't really, in his mind, call for a lot of Derrick Henry, especially in those 2-minute drills. Well, hopefully the Ravens just be able to ground and pound, especially after what we saw the Ravens do to Pittsburgh at times last season.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because we talk about last year, but you even look at the Bills game where, you know, they just kept going, you know, right at the D line of the Steelers to the point where they were just bouncing it to the outside. And what TJ Watt said, he's never seen a team just run the same play over and over again. And obviously, you know, you're talking about the Bills O-line having their issues, didn't have their 2 starting right tackles in, and they still managed. Cook managed what I think 60 yards after contact, and which is incredible. And their team darn near rushed for over 300 yards. So I say all that to say, our version of James Cook is Derrick Henry. Our version of a back that is having a backup offensive line is having Voorhees and Daniel Faalele and Roger Rosengarten, for that matter. And I think there is going to be one of those situations where, hey, if you guys recognize what's at stake, you know Pittsburgh is going to be wanting to redeem themselves after their embarrassment at home. They had that same kind of mantra when they played up against the Packers, where the Packers went into Pittsburgh and was it 5 or 6 consecutive possessions they scored on the Pittsburgh defense. Then I forget who Pittsburgh played next, but they absolutely defensively mud stomped them. And so we ain't trying to be mud stomped. We trying to be on the other end of what is a Steelers team that is bleeding very much so from poor play, and you want to kick them while they're down. So I think that aspect of kicking them while they're down is something where, yeah, they're injured and they're hurt. Hey, this is football, and you got to take advantage of it. And I will be highly disappointed if this offensive line can't go out there and perform and do what is necessary for them to have a successful time against a depleted Pittsburgh defense.
Yeah, look, we know that, Pittsburgh still has names on that defense, but it's not the same. They're a middling to low tier unit this year, which is kind of crazy after all the years we've said, man, look at how much the Steelers defense is carrying. And now it's just like, well, nothing's going right for them at this point. But the Ravens also have to figure out what is going wrong for them. Now, the Steelers also made a couple of moves. They signed Asante Samuel Jr. to their active roster from the practice squad. They waived Darius Slay in response to that. And Slay, like Juan Thornhill, who they also waived a couple weeks earlier, they have had horrible seasons. So that's that. They also signed Adam Thielen. They actually claimed him off of waivers from the Vikings. So who knows if he'll play in this Ravens game coming up. But Q, this game has major playoff implications. Aaron Schatz, who's the creator of DVOA, he outlined just how important this game is. Based on their simulation, if the Ravens win, the Ravens have a 70% chance to make the playoffs. The Steelers, 23%. If the Steelers win, the Steelers have a 75% chance to make the playoffs. Ravens at 21%. High stakes games, Q. I know you've played in a lot of them over the course of your career. What is the difference? I know we talked a little bit about the Ravens and Steelers rivalry on the squad show and, talking about what that week is like, but just any high leverage game like this, even when it's not like do or die for your season in terms of it being the last week of the year and, everything's over after this if you lose. But if you lose this game, everything might be over because of how the Ravens, I mentioned this, the Ravens have the 6th hardest strength of schedule among the remaining AFC North teams that are competing. We're not going to talk about Cleveland here. They're 19. But Pittsburgh is 23. Cincinnati is 27. So they have some tough games coming up after the Steelers game. And if they lose this one, it's going to be, I think, mighty tough for them to climb out of that hole.
Yeah, and I don't even like my head is spinning with all the analytics of the percentages, and I respect it. I totally do. But the reason why my head spins is because when you're watching the game and you get so much angst to look ahead and think about this, think about that. Right now, John Harbaugh and company, they have what is coveted. And what I mean by that is you have control of your own destiny. So there's that. I don't want to look ahead. I want them to take advantage of what you have in front of you. And if you can't take advantage of what you have in front of you, then you're not deserving of looking ahead and even worrying about all the things. Because this is a winnable game. This is a winnable game. This is a game you're supposed to go out there and handle your business, not sit there and be like, well, no. This is a game where you're supposed to win. And so with that, that's where for me, I don't want to look ahead. I don't want to get caught up in, oh well, so I think if this team had by the dividend of the fraction move one decimal point over. You know what? It's so funny. This offseason, I mean, this offseason and the offseason of whether or not Lamar was going to sign, talk about epic.
Still regular season football to play. That's the good news. The Ravens will have an opportunity. Yeah. It still got some games to play. And then once the games are over, then of course we'll figure out what this Ravens team needs to do in the offseason based off of how far or not far, not even making the playoffs, they go. But Q, I appreciate you. Thanks so much for hopping on, talking football with me. Before I get you out of here, please tell people where they can find you and what you're working on.
MissileTraining.com. MissileTraining.com is my human movement and sports performance page where you can reach out to me. If you're looking for human movement, doesn't matter the age, 6 all the way up to 86, we got something for you to be able to help you move more efficiently and better and stronger, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. At the same time, when it comes to sports performance training, whether you're an individual, whether you're a group training, whether you are, doesn't matter, team, sport, baseball, basketball, football, wrestling, you name it, we do it. We help you. Lacrosse, softball, pitchers, all of it. That being said, missiletraining.com. Reach out to me on there. I will love to interact with you. Of course, you can see me on WJZ, Purple Pregame. Love to see you guys there. And if you're at the game, M&T Bank Stadium, you will see myself and my other colleagues of Super Bowl 35. We'll be hanging out, celebrating our 25th anniversary of the championship over the New York Football Giants, 34-7. mm. And then afterwards, you're going to see Kevin Oestreicher and I right here on Locked On Ravens Squad Show Edition and Sam and Joku, where we just break it down. So each and every week, you get a chance, check us out, and hopefully we'll be able to interact with you.
Hey, be sure to go support Q with everything he has going on. He does awesome work, and so the links will be in the description down below. Q, I appreciate you as always. Thanks for hopping on, and thank you to everybody who watched and listened today to Locked On Ravens. And of course, on the way up, be sure you hit the like and subscribe button in video form, follow along and subscribe in audio form for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Coming up later today, it will be the squad show with Q, Sam, and I, and then we'll also have our regular show tomorrow, 6 a.m. Eastern time. So be sure to stay tuned, and I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.